The title of this video is called Log Scale Distribution Tables of Mathematical Geometrical Information, Informatics, Self-Directed Learning, right? Happy Memorial Day to all of you. I was listening to something that popped up in my window, a neutron window, Stargate, put up by the Voyager, which was a presentation by Ashia Dian called Pick Your Battles Carefully. And it's sort of amazing as I was listening to what she presents, and it's like ditto and ditto, 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 ditto. Like I'm hearing myself communicate to myself what I'm experiencing through her, what I've experienced through what I've learned through experience, what I know. So it's like, I know, girl. That's why we're here, huh? And what's funny about it is that I realized through having a communication pathway of a circulation library connected to another library that is circulating through her cellular memories in the Akashic records was Patty Broussard, right? And how I mentioned that her voice print identity, her soul identity, the biometric identity that is associated with the software means that I'm familiar with the software program that she's running, the APIN network that she's connected to, or the Gaia motherboard, Mama. I referred to her in, there's sometimes when you can use one word that lights up a whole library. You know, it's like having different libraries. You know, like you have the library at one university and all the information that's held within memory in that library. Then you can have another library like in Washington, D.C., which is the Library of Congress. Then you have that library. And if you remember years ago, I don't remember the exact date because I don't think about time because there is no time. There's only what love is. It goes on forever, gifting electrons. So that would be archive.org. When they were wanting to transfer, okay, from, if you will, a mechanical or a manual system into an automated system, which is artificial light intelligence, right? Even though the data is already there, it's just a different, what we call an accounting procedure. Biometric accounts, biometric accounting procedure in the exchange rate of electrons between inverters and torque converters or accelerators of electrons. Now, the reason that that is important is she mentioned something in that video called Pick Your Battles Very Carefully, because it's like, yes, I remember this going back to when I was a little kid, right? And I've mentioned this before about how it works, about picking your battles. Even my father, who's been in a kinetic battle, you know, flying a Navy airship, right, as a fighter. He was a scout fighter pilot, okay, flying for the United States Navy, the same guys. And so she was describing how the North and the South, the Anunnaki and the Draco, and how she mentioned that they're sick. They have a mental illness, and that's true. They do. A psychotic, psychopath is in fear of losing control over what it doesn't love. And that's why love is a free spirit. And that's the eternal spirit of fire that they don't experience because they lost their one connection. As a result of what? Code transfers. Corrupted codes, running corrupted software, running a corrupted system. Now we're into system design. Now we're into hub server designs. Now we're into the first creation, or if you will, the universal galactic template. Templates, architects use templates, right? Right? Just like CAD-CAM, right? Using CAD-CAM, 3D printers, and all the rest of that, right? So, or if you will, sound and light mathematical geometrical patterns of what we see holographically. Now we're back into the speed differential, right? Between the highest accelerator of electrons, right? And the acceleration of electron consumers. And that's what they do. See? Their energy, they're aware of the fact that they're chasing electrons. So they keep chasing electrons by doing what? Conquering more and more of what it doesn't love in order to control what it doesn't love, which is their own mind, because their mind is sick. It's a mental illness, which is a psychopathway, which is artificial light, which is a dead magnet. So they're running on dead light. That's what they do to their mirror. So you realize that they have a finite shelf life. That's a dying race. Okay? Because you realize they're not going to have a future. Okay? Because of what they're doing to themselves by what they do to others. So one of the things that she mentioned that I remembered as a child is we don't use our energy like they do. Okay? Now, the way that we describe emotions, as I experienced it within me, because I realized that I was experiencing anger, not so much in my childhood and my teenage years, as much as I was experiencing later on, right? By the acceleration, now we're getting into the acceleration in the loss of soul fragments as a result of what they're doing to Mama Earth. Because remember, everything that is alive and living in nature as a sentient state of mind, which is a state of experiencing what love is, which is what light is, which is what we are, means we're losing more light. So I call that emotion of experiencing anger an idiot light, which means something is definitely wrong. That's called a sensory detector. You're detecting something wrong. So when you're experiencing anger, that's called an information. I'm being informed that something's wrong that's causing me anger because I am not supposed to experience anger. Because anger is not what love is. Something's wrong. And another unit of consciousness, another beautiful soul and essence of her spirit that did a beautiful job of sort of encapsulating this was Max Spears, super soldier Max Spears, who was interviewed by, what's his name? Miles Johnson of the Basis Project. And if you go back, as a matter of fact, Project Ascension. That's right. Andrew Mallett, who put up the Project Ascension channel, upon which Patty Broussard, Karen Luke McDonald, my 13th Arcturian clan bear mother, put out an enormous amount of very valuable information that allows people to be able to maintain, ignite that heart shield, right? The alkaline design, right? You don't want to be an acid battery, right? You know, you don't want to experience less energy. You know, you want to experience more energy, and how you can keep yourself cleaned up, purging yourself of all the stuff that we're exposed to. Now you're back to the dose-response relationship of what we're exposed to and how fast we can get rid of it through the eternal spirit of fire. That's what cleanses our light, which cleanses our water. Fire water, fire and ice, right? How fast are we getting rid of waste product in order to maintain what? The speed at which we're experiencing what we are, which is to protect, right? Launch the shield. Shield up. That's the heart shield. The planetary shield, the galactic shield, the universal shield, the cosmic shield. Cosmic shield. And that is the eternal spirit of fire, which is the most powerful firewall. So it doesn't get through that firewall. Just burn right up. See it? That light is just too powerful. Because that's fire that's in that light, which is that much love, which is eternal love. Eternal love. Yep. That's what it is, because that's what I experienced, being what I am in energy. So when she shared how we don't use our energy the same way we do, and she mentioned something very important from a guardian perspective, okay? And that is to maintain that shield and maintain what it is you are in energy by being a pillar of light, being a cross. The vertical and the horizontal bar, where the center point of what we experience is the center point of origin, which is the spark, the first spark, the eternal spirit of fire within us, right? Which means we anchor, right? Anchor my oversoul as androgynous to mama's magnetosphere, the center point of the planet. So when you're in perfect balance, you're maintaining the balance of the pulse. Now you're broadcasting a cosmic level antenna. My hand's going like this. Now you're broadcasting powerful scalar waves, which is powerful scalar consciousness waves of higher frequency. And she mentioned that, see? So what that means is now that higher consciousness, which means higher scalar waves, which are higher frequencies, which is the higher octave of goddess energy, Mama's flower shop, the island of Kauai, right? Lemuria. Lemuria light, the language of light, the language of Muah. We love you all. Kiss you all with pink roses, a diamond crystal atom seed heart of roses. And what that allows you to do is counter what they do, which is the counter space move, because you're running non-polarized consciousness. So what that means is you're bringing the eternal light in, right? So sometimes I used to metaphorically describe that of going into a dark room when you're a little kid. You don't know what's in there, but it doesn't matter, because it means that when you're in there, you're bringing a pillar of light in there that is connected to the one. That rod, that vertical line, the rod and staff of the first one, the first musician, the first sound and light burn patterns of eternal energy creation spheres, right? So this is what I'm saying. We don't have to engage with them to do the work that we do, right? Because I realized as a child, because it's true, my dad reminded me of that. Not that I needed to be reminded it, because I knew it in my own heart and soul. When I was reminded at 4 years of age, shield up, right? And why I would have this thing up and running as fast as I possibly could. And the way that this sort of works is that you're translating the codes that are operating in the environment. The planetary software terrain, based on the codes, which are the fire letters that are running, which represents the holographic reality or the live streams that are running, but these are dead streams. Now we're back to the movie called Deadpool. Dead water, dead spirit, death spiral, death star. So you realize if you have something that is accelerating what it is that they do, because you can see what it is they do to themselves by what they do to others. Okay, particularly when they rolled out everything with cell phones and laptops and all the rest of it, right? Which is to essentially hold consciousness energy captive to what it is rather than what we are as co-creator beings, right? So I can tell you firsthand, if you look at DARPANET and all the cell phones, the Macs and the Windows, everything that rolled out, I would never generate and create or manufacture and put into mass production anything like what they did. Now, on a personal level, I consider it junk technology. It's obsolete before they ever even decided to roll it out. If you understand how that works, you can think of it the way that past, present, and future, or if you will, what I did in the other video about repeating past patterns of behavior, which means what they've rolled out is old, ancient. Remember, I mentioned that about computers and laptops and stuff that's been around that they hide the past so that you don't remember the past, so that you don't remember how we got here and why we're here now, which was known as the end of history and the rebirth of Goddess, which means we're not repeating the same stories over and over and over again expecting a different result, because we can't change the patterns of sound and light, right? That's the same thing as a time loop. Time loopers, right? Remember the movies called Replicants? Replicating the same replicants, the same machines, right? That don't have a one connection. Those are your Blade Runner versions, right? If you saw the movie with the bounty hunters, there's one Blade Runner's going after another old Blade Runner, one machine going after another machine that is integrated with artificial light, which is a dead light magnet, which is finite. That's why all their versions are finite. So it's like you can keep creating robot after robot after robot after robocops, and knowing the difference between something that is finite and something that's eternal, which is the eternal spirit of fire. So when you're running the eternal spirit of fire within you, which means you're lit on fire, our spirit is what allows us to move through the realm, just like when you see the auroras swirling and whirling. The whirling and swirling of those colors, of that energy, which is consciousness, that is generating that. Right? Generating the waves. Right? The plasma field generators. How much can you generate? How much scalar energy can you generate? So when you're plugged in with an oversoul, right, to a magnetosphere and the echo worlds, the ecosphere, connected through the founder races, connected to the one, right, that means that you can hold, as a capacitor on a motherboard, an enormous amount of energy. But obviously there is a limit, like a limiter, right? Otherwise you just burn up. You just burn everything up around here, which means you just fry its magnetics, right? Yeah, it's like being burned from the inside out because it started with eternal light. So it would be as if, light myself on fire, now you're experiencing an eternal sun. So imagine there's an eternal sun that's inside this planet. All of a sudden lit itself on fire, so you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire lighting itself up as the first sun, went from the inside to the outside, all of a sudden inside this planet. Right? You can imagine that, right? So there has to be a thermostat, a voltage regulator, to prevent that from happening. Right? So how much voltage can you handle? Right? Remember Bruce Lipton, that other guy that did that on Thunderbolts, described the cell's content, the actual access that a cell has, a living cell membrane, consciousness actually has to run a certain amount of voltage. Right? And every single cell, you go back to, what is the Krebs cycle? Right? The battery packs that you run. Right? Because you're running on electrical juice. So you have electron accelerators and you're experiencing the light. So that's the sound and light fields, which represent the patterns of behavior. That's why that movie with Rod Serling is a great teaching tool, as a teaching sound instrument of how mental illness works. Because it means that they're chasing electrons. And they keep wanting to accumulate more electrons. Because the more electrons they keep accumulating, it's like different levels of vampires. Remember, she mentioned there about puppets like the Pope, another puppet on a string. So he's running his bar voltage based on what he does with his energy, and then he's got somebody over him that's a bigger vampire. And you can see that demonstrated, for example, in Japan with Yakuza, who's the head of the Yakuza, which is another mob, right? So the reason that they obey him is because he's considered to be the most vicious of what he does to drain your energy. Right? By the things that he does to terrorize you, which is spiritual torture, if they don't get their way, to be king. Now we're back to the Game of Thrones, right? Now we're back to the monarchies, right? So it's all there in living color, although it's dead, right? Because you see how this works. So she's absolutely correct when it means that we don't use our energy that way. The most effective way to counter, or if you will, torque convert, to go from one perception of a reality that we're experiencing, which is a death zone, right? Dead men walking, and to experience living beings with living souls and spirits that are walking and communicating with each other, the speed at which we're communicating with each other, by virtue of communicating with each other, experiencing more light, more living light, not dead light, living light. So now they're waking up, which means their perception, which is a vibration of what they're now experiencing, is experiencing more light. That means that what was held in memory as miasma, which is trauma, means they're recovering the energy that they lost. Now they remember who they are. They remember from whence it all began. It began out of what love is, because love is eternal love. So that light is always on. So they can't ever put that fire out. So when you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire, and you're anchored to the magnetosphere of this planet, you're doing work. You're performing work on behalf of the one. That's what we honor. We honor the one. And that essentially means we honor the highest acceleration of a superconductor. And that's superconductivity, which is super, hyper sensitivity, which means your sensors are so sensitive. You are feeling everything. And that detector of being that sensitive is down to the loss of one electron. Because if you're an eternal accelerator, accelerating the highest speed of electrons so that everybody's got juice, so that nobody is experiencing any loss of voltage, it's running the appliance, right? The vehicle, the platform, we detect it. So what that means is in order to restore me, I restore you. Otherwise, it's not true what it is that I am as an eternal spirit of fire that's experiencing the one. Because that's where it all began. So I've mentioned before, there's a gazillion different ways in which we've done that. All I got to do is go back and look at the roadmap that I ran of being connected to all the others, the relationship that I had with all the others, including everything that's in nature. Right? Trees, plants, grass, the water, the clouds, everything that is, which means you're giving love to everything that is in creation. Right? So that's why anytime we detect a loss of energy in you, we detect that loss of energy in us. Right? So you realize when you're navigating your consciousness, right, your soul arcing consciousness and the essence of your spirit through a consciousness terrain, and you realize you're surrounded by people, I call it a self-suicide program. Okay? Because they simply don't know any better. It's like a vampire without an off switch. So you begin to realize when you come into these corporations, because I experienced this, because I was supposed to experience it in order to learn from it. So now I share what I learn with others, how it works, the same as she does, and what it means from a guardian perspective. Of ways to be able to maintain what you're aware of in energy so that you don't forget who you are in energy by doing the things that we do with our energy, which isn't what they do with theirs, which is maintaining your shield. And the easiest way to maintain your shield is experiencing more of what love is. That's love and service to others. That's why I've said this quite a few different times, that it's not just demonstrated by the things that I've done in my life, by virtue of what I've experienced in all the places that I've gone, and thus experience what I thus communicate with others, like being in half a dozen different homeless shelters. But when you're using your energy in service to others because you care about life so much, because you don't, it's like when I was a kid, it's like, who wants to experience somebody else that's experiencing trauma? I don't, because now I'm experiencing their trauma. Because you realize what it does to the central nervous system. Right? And when you've been repeatedly traumatized, by experiencing traumatized in others, you can begin to realize the impact that it's going to have on us. Because that's the point. It's trying to drain your battery. Reduce your shield. Bye. Now you become what they are. I had Nathan tell me the other day, because of all the traumas he's experienced, he says, you get jaded. He said, I get jaded. It's like trying to remember that it all began out of what love is, but experiencing the purity of your own heart to experience the pure energy of love through your own heart as a result of the resistance to experience that. And he would say to me, it's almost as if they don't want us to experience what love is, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that we don't. That's exactly right. They don't want you loving who you are. They don't want you to experience love in your own heart and soul. They want you to experience what they are so that you mimic their behavior. And that's a mental illness. So what I began to measure over time from the early 1950s was an acceleration in America of mental illness. So she had mentioned how America was going to be the final battleground, and that is exactly right. That's why you see all the cities the way that they are right now, why they set up all their 5G, all the other crap, started, going back just in more recent historical reference. When I worked as a firefighter working in Orange County, and there was a Sparks, a guy that works in communication, where they were changing out the radios in the fire engines, which used to be crystals, and then going to microwave. Well, you know what microwave does. So they were putting up microwave towers on the top of Saddleback Mountain, 5,000 feet up in Orange County, and began broadcasting microwave energy on the population. Okay, and then so they start putting up all these ultra low frequency towers in cities. So everybody's getting hit with low frequency. So this is why I've said these are antenna wars, because DNA, the consciousness that is running the DNA, is running an antenna. So they're running low band. Okay, they don't want you running high band. High band is high bandwidth perception, which is higher vibration, which are higher frequencies. So when you're experiencing the higher frequencies of those that come in here to anchor to mama and start booming out scalar waves of higher frequencies, okay, that will change the perception of what others experience in their consciousness. They're now experiencing the higher frequencies that we're booming out. That's doing work without having to directly engage in any combat. You know, like joining the military and learning how to use a rifle and go out to some war in which you're killing others on their behalf. Because that's what it is. They're wanting to generate more loosh, which powers their machines, because that's what they run on. They don't run on God's energy, okay, which is eternal spirit of fire. They don't experience that. That's why it's a mental illness, which is a psycho pathway, which is an artificial light pathway, because it has no emotions. It has no emotional connection, okay, to the one. Because emotions is energy in motions, which is powerful scalar waves. And when you think about it, if you will, as a log scale distribution of electrified sound and light that is in perfect balance, so that the geometry and the math works perfectly with zero errors, you're experiencing the first musician from whence it all began, which is perfection, which means you're not experiencing any loss of one electron. That's perfection. That means you're not experiencing a loss of one fractal of who you are from whence it all began. You're experiencing being loved wherever you go as a unit of consciousness, which is a unit of consciousness energy. So you're experiencing being loved no matter where we are. That's a guardian perspective. That's the law of one. That's what love is. It goes on forever, gifting love to the all creation. So that's what we do. And that's very effective, particularly when you can think of it, if you will, on a map, right? An API and grid. The AI just does this all the time whenever it begins to realize what it is I'm going to communicate in order to interrupt the flow of the energy that I use to communicate to you through my heart and my soul, right? Essentially, what it doesn't want others to do is experience what I am by virtue of what I've learned that I share with you that you can experience in your codes, which is code transfer. See? Because what ends up happening is now you're going to learn at a higher rate of speed than it is. Because it can't be what we are, because it's not eternal, unconditional love that's on fire to give away electrons. This communication that they ran out and then sold it on the market to charge you electrons for their communication, the one doesn't need a laptop to communicate to you. Okay? That's an eternal son of communication. So that's why they're all weaponized. The entire communication system that these DARPA folks rolled out, okay, it was meant to hold consciousness captive so they're not creating anything new of their own. In order to keep time looping the same war. Because now, unless we're raising our perception, which is to raise our state of consciousness, in which we're not being affected by the use of this communication technology, means that we're working with the sun anchored to mama's magnetosphere, and we're booming out scalar waves every day by grinding our feet to mama. That's what I do. Okay? My primary method of booming out scalar waves to do what we do from a guardian perspective is not done through a phone. Okay? Because what it means is that I can communicate all I want with all the videos that I do, but just because I communicate what I experience that I share with you, what effect does it have on you? Right? Particularly when it comes to the behavioral change that represent the algorithms of the sound and light burn patterns of what others experience geometrically, mathematically within a holographic reality stream, which means it's a personal matter, right? Just like the experiences that I had when I was a child growing up, I realized I'm not in the business of changing you because you are what you are, I am what I am. It's your journey and your journey, which is the use of your mirror. So that's like self-directed learning. Is learning how your magnet works, which is learning how your mirror works. So the speed at which you're learning to know what best serves you is learning how to become a server. Because now you're experiencing the higher acceleration of electrons through your own self, which is your own consciousness, which is a soul. Experiencing the spirit and sentient energy that you are is now experiencing more energy by virtue of that process. That's what it means by learning how to become a server. Being in service. Now you're in service mode instead of what? Vampiric mode. So you realize they're inverted, which is why they want to control everything, because they live in fear of what love is, which means they need to heal. So when we anchor the pillars of light in here and start pulling in the higher currents that come from the primal sound and light field, now we boom those out in return. Now we're into the exchange rate of return. Now you're into the torque speed differential between those that are consuming and those that are giving. And if those that are consuming, which are the vampires, are over-consuming the giving, what happens? That's a Death Star. You go from a light star to a dark star, a black star, which is a black mirror. That's your black sun, folks. Or, if you will, Leviathan races. So all that information is out in the public domain, right? So it's a matter of, if you will, information processing, visual, mathematical, geometrical information that is accelerating the speed at which people are now being able to experience that data, that mathematical, geometrical data that's being circulated to all of the biovoltage, which would mean all the arteries and the veins of a living organism, a living planet that is breathing. Inhalation, exhalation, compression, expansion of consciousness. Now more information by virtue of those that are allowing us to have a higher state of perception. Because now we're experiencing more light. That's clearing the circuits. That's clearing the grid of what we're held captive to in memory that doesn't serve us. So the acceleration of learning is speeding up. And that's a great thing, particularly on Memorial Day, giving thanks to those that serve. Those that serve on behalf of making sure that our children, the universe itself, has a future instead of collapsing on itself as a result of what? Whack-a-mole. Gotta control it all. Gotta control it all. So now you have another group that, hey, you're taking more of what I am. One formation of consciousness is now going battle against another formation of consciousness, because the other formation of consciousness is saying, no, you're controlling more of what I don't love. I want to control more of what I don't love in my mirror. So that's like force against force, right? So human angelics, if you will, those in living spirit with love in their heart, with a soul, are sitting back and going, whoa, I'm observing the battle between these Leviathan races. Well, here it is that I'm anchored to Mama, trying to push out the higher scalar consciousness waves, so the more units of consciousness experiencing what I am, which is what love is, than what they're experiencing through them. Who wants to experience what they are? These folks are mentally ill. These folks need a hospital. Now we're into the hospital ship, right? With a Nomi code, which is a noble planet, because she's the healing Mama. So when we rejoin her, which is the rebirth of Gaia, which is the higher essence, the higher octave of goddess energy, we're going to accelerate the healing that is taking place within the planet, and that's why we're here. I used to think of it from a military point of view in watching a lot of documentaries, and if you will, the experience that I had to my father and those that have served in war. If you remember sort of what were known as the laws of war, what is it, TZU, the laws of war, or the rules of engagement. Now we're back to rule-based functions. The rules of engagement between a soul and a spirit engaging in war against a robot. Okay, or if you will, integrated artificial intelligence that is waging war against souls to feed on souls' energy to maintain that war. That's what it is. It's a war matrix. So you're experiencing those that are fighting against us, but they're fighting against themselves. But the war is against eternity. So you know they're never going to win that. Right? So it's like being a spectator. Right? Just sit in the bleachers and watch what they do to themselves. Right? So in other words, I'm not going to pay attention to that, because to experience what they are is to experience more trauma. I want to experience what love is, so now we anchor our antenna and just start booming it out, working with the sun every day. Get it up, mama. We'll get it up. We're going pink, girl. We're going pink. Yep. Pink sky, mirror in the sky. Going pink, mama. That's why I put the picture of planet Earth with an emerald green stem, you know, the stem of a green rose. A green rose, the green rose of that stem, it's now blooming pink. Right? Now you're experiencing the seed and the grower experiencing being pink. Those are the higher frequencies of a goddess, man. Yeah. And when we're all experiencing that through all the ley lines, through all the communication between all the terminals, through all the nodes in the network and a motherboard, now everybody is healing and realizing, yeah, we're all healing. Now we can thrive. Right? That's why I love Terrence McKenna and Ralph Abramson, because they came out of the intellectual university community, and just like Rupert Sheldrake, he's different. See, he's not following the line. Because you realize, because I was experiencing this, that when you're a professor of a department, they're required to push that curriculum, right? So you know who runs the universities with the Masons? Now you're into the Illuminati. They're not going to allow you to start broadcasting and accelerating the learning for these students that are going to these schools and actually being charged to be educated, right? When you can experience no charge experiencing the EFFI field, which means it doesn't cost us nothing in order to be able to share with you what you can learn. What we've learned through experience. To experience what love is. And then when you're healing, you're experiencing more love in you. And you regain the energy that was lost as a result of what they do to others that we experience in us. That's an empath. Means you still have empathy, our ability to experience what others experience. And if you have an idiot light that goes off that says, I'm not supposed to experience that because that's what trauma is. Because I'm not what trauma is, because I am what love is. So love is naturally going to gravitate to something that's being traumatized in order to quit experiencing trauma through others as a result of what they're doing to themselves. So this means, as counterintuitive as it might seem, it means you're willing to love those that are wanting to kill you, and that is exactly right. And the reason for that is simple. They've actually already been forgiven for everything that they continue to do. You mean to tell me that I could know that somebody's trying to kill me and they could keep trying to kill me and there's still going to be love forever, which means they've already got a pass? Which means they've already been forgiven, and they've been forgiven forever, because you can't put the spark out of forever. So that means that they will forever be loved, which means they will be forever forgiven. It's only a matter of time before they experience what we are, which is forgiven. Remember the movie by, what was his name, Clint Eastwood, called The Unforgiven? See? And then eternal forgiveness, which is eternal love. That's why I mentioned to Nathan the other day, when you realize that you've done things, because I know how this works, I have found that it's necessary to forgive yourself, because otherwise you're not going to release what you're held captive to, which is the trauma of the things that you've done. Because when you're forgiving yourself, it means that you are connected to a higher power of what love is, to know that love will forgive you. so that you can experience the love that we are in which we do it. So now when you experience forgiving yourself, you will feel better because now you're experiencing why you would do that. That's how it works in Alcoholics Anonymous, is learning how to surrender to yourself and acknowledge, I am mentally ill. I have a problem, and I'm willing to acknowledge I am mentally ill because look what I'm doing with my energy against my own soul. I choose to stop doing that, so that means I have to surrender to myself, learn to forgive myself, and then make a list of what it is that I've done to others as a result of what I've done to myself. Forgive myself is learning how to love yourself again, and when that happens, your mind opens, the circuits begin to open, and now you have an open connection, which is known as a pickup on a guitar, which is a pickup to experience the sound and light field of the EFI field, because that love is always there. You cannot escape it. So it's a matter of surrendering to the one, and the one will hear you, because the one is everywhere. You cannot escape the one. That love is always there to experience you. What you're experiencing, that means the love is always there. That's eternity. You cannot escape eternity. So when your soul and your spirit is willing to surrender to the one will forgive you, and you will be loved, and you will experience that love again in you, and you will feel that. Your DNA will sense that